The birth of ancient Egypt before the pharaohs ruled for thousands of years. One civilization captured the imagination of the world more than any other. Towering pyramids rose above endless deserts. Massive temples were carved with mysterious symbols. Kings were buried beneath mountains of stone together with unimaginable treasures. Two later generations. Ancient Egypt seemed less like a real kingdom and more like a forgotten world created by the gods themselves. Yet for centuries almost nobody could read the messages its people had left behind. The walls of temples, statues, tombs, and monuments were covered with strange pictures: birds, eyes, snakes, suns, and animals. Travelers admired them, scholars copied them, but no one truly understood what they meant. Egypt had kept its secrets for nearly 1,500 years. Everything changed during Napoleon Bonaparte's Egyptian campaign in the summer of 1799. Near the small town of Rosetta, French engineers were building an old fortress and covered a dark stone covered with 3 different scripts. At first, it looked like nothing more than another ancient monument. Instead, it became one of archaeology's greatest discoveries. The Rosetta Stone allowed scholars to compare ancient hieroglyphs with Greek writing. More than 20 years later, French linguist Jean-François Champollion finally unlocked the forgotten language of the pharaohs. Overnight, temples that had remained silent for centuries began telling their stories again. Kings regained their names. Battles returned to history. Ancient prayers could once again be read aloud. But to understand Egypt, we must travel much farther back than the pyramids. Long before the first pharaoh wore a crown. Long before hieroglyphs existed. Before cities. Before temples. Before history itself. There was only a river. Across northeastern Africa stretched an unforgiving landscape. Endless deserts baked beneath an unforgiving sun. Rain was rare. Vegetation was scarce. Most regions could support only scattered groups of hunters struggling to survive. Yet every year something extraordinary happened. Far to the south, seasonal rains fell across the Ethiopian highlands. Weeks later, the Nile River overflowed its banks, spreading rich black silt across hundreds of miles of dry land before retreating once again. What appeared to be destruction was actually renewal. The floods transformed barren ground into one of the most fertile places on earth. Without the Nile, there would have been no Egypt. The ancient historian Herodotus later wrote, "Egypt is the gift of the Nile." Modern archaeology has only strengthened those words. The river was not simply useful, it created an entire civilization. As the floodwaters withdrew, people returned to the freshly enriched soil. Wild grains grew in abundance. Fish filled the shallow pools. Birds migrated along the wetlands. Large animals gathered to drink. Life concentrated around the river like nowhere else in northeastern Africa. Gradually, families stopped wandering. Instead of following migrating herds across the desert, they built permanent homes beside the Nile. These early villages marked one of humanity's greatest turning points. People began cultivating wheat and barley. They domesticated cattle, sheep, and goats. Simple irrigation channels carried river water into nearby fields. Food became more predictable. Communities expanded. Population increased. For the first time, people could store enough grain to survive poor harvests. Agriculture gave humanity something far more valuable than food. It gave people time. Time to invent. Time to trade. Time to build. Time to dream. Excavations at Fayum Oasis reveal some of Egypt's earliest farming communities, dating back more than 7,000 years. Unlike wandering hunter-gatherers, these people dug storage pits beneath their homes to protect grain from animals and floods. They crafted woven baskets strong enough to carry harvests across long distances. Pottery became increasingly sophisticated. Stone tools were polished instead of simply chipped. These changes may seem small, but together they transformed daily life forever. Around the same time, another remarkable idea appeared. People began believing that death was not the end. Bodies were carefully placed in shallow graves facing the rising sun. Food, jewelry, tools, and weapons were buried beside the deceased. Why provide supplies to someone who would never return? Because they believed the journey continued. This simple belief would eventually grow into one of history's most elaborate visions of the afterlife. Thousands of years later, it would inspire pyramids, golden tombs, royal mummies, and some of the greatest monuments ever built. Long before Osiris became lord of the underworld, another legend may already have existed. Many archaeologists believe early Egyptians worshipped sacred birds that symbolized rebirth. After the annual floods, one of these evolved into the legendary Bennu bird. According to Egyptian mythology, the Bennu landed upon the first mound of land that emerged from the endless waters. At the beginning of creation, Its cry marked the first sunrise. Its flight began time itself. Centuries later, Greek writers would compare the Bennu to another mythical creature, the phoenix. Whether myth or memory, the story reflected something Egyptians witnessed every year. The land itself seemed to die beneath floodwaters, only to be reborn stronger than before. As villages multiplied, trade expanded. Obsidian arrived from distant volcanic regions. Turquoise crossed the Sinai Peninsula. Shells reached the Nile from both the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. Ideas traveled alongside goods. Art became more detailed. Religious beliefs spread between communities. Leadership slowly emerged. The strongest hunters no longer ruled alone. Successful farmers, skilled craftsmen, and respected elders gained influence. Some villages united peacefully. Others competed for fertile land. Small rival chiefdoms appeared across the Nile Valley. They would eventually become kingdoms. Meanwhile, the desert itself played an unexpected role in Egypt's future. Although harsh, it acted like a giant natural fortress. To the east lay rugged mountains. To the west stretched the endless Sahara. The Mediterranean protected the north. Dangerous cataracts guarded the southern frontier. Unlike Mesopotamia, where armies frequently invaded across open plains, Egypt enjoyed remarkable geographical protection. This isolation allowed its culture to develop with extraordinary continuity for thousands of years. Then another remarkable innovation appeared: boats. At first they were little more than bundles of papyrus reeds tied together with rope. Soon they became wooden vessels capable of carrying people, animals, and enormous quantities of goods. The Nile became Egypt's first highway. Travel that would have taken weeks across desert landscapes now required only days by river. Trade accelerated. Ideas spread faster than ever before. Villages became connected like beads on a string. The river united people long before kings ever did. As prosperity increased, social differences slowly emerged. Some families accumulated larger herds. Others controlled fertile farmland. Certain craftsmen became famous for exceptional pottery or stonework. Rich burials began appearing beside simpler graves. Power was becoming visible, so was inequality. But another mystery was also taking shape. The earliest sacred symbols began appearing on decorated pottery and ceremonial objects. Falcons, jackals, cobras, the sun. These images would later become the foundations of Egyptian religion. Gods had not yet received their familiar names, but their symbols had already begun watching over the Nile. In later centuries, Egyptian priests taught that creation began in darkness. Before the world existed, there was only an endless ocean called Nun. From those waters rose the first hill of land. Upon it stood the Bennu bird. Nearby bloomed the first lotus flower. As its petals opened, sunlight entered the universe. Although impossible to verify historically, this myth beautifully mirrored Egypt's environment. Every flood erased the landscape. Every retreat of the waters revealed new land. Creation repeated itself each year before the eyes of every farmer. Religion and nature became inseparable. By approximately 4000 BC, several powerful cultures dominated different parts of the Nile Valley. Some specialized in farming. Others excelled at trade. Others developed remarkable artistic traditions. Among them, the Naqada culture became especially influential. Its craftsmen produced elegant stone vessels, painted pottery, ceremonial palettes, and finely worked copper tools. Long-distance trade reached Nubia, the Levant, and beyond. The first true elites began emerging. Large ceremonial centers appeared. Political power was becoming centralized. Egypt was preparing for something unprecedented: the birth of kingship. But before one ruler united the two lands, before the white crown met the red crown, before the pyramids reshaped the horizon, a mysterious generation of forgotten rulers walked the Nile. Some historians call them the Scorpion Kings. Others believe they were powerful chiefs whose achievements were later absorbed into royal legends. Very little survives. Fragments of ceremonial maces, broken inscriptions, damaged palettes. Yet these shadowy figures may have laid the foundations for everything that followed. The age of pharaohs was about to begin, and with it, one of the greatest civilizations in human history. The rise of the first pharaohs. Egypt becomes one kingdom as villages expanded into prosperous towns. Competition became inevitable. The fertile banks of the Nile could support growing populations, but they could not satisfy every ambition. Control of farmland meant control of food. Control of food meant wealth, and wealth quickly became power. By around 3500 BC, dozens of independent communities stretched from the Mediterranean delta to the rocky cliffs near modern Aswan. Each had its own leaders, traditions, protective deities, and symbols of authority. Some were peaceful trading centers. Others were heavily fortified settlements prepared for conflict. Over time, these communities merged into larger territories. Eventually, only two powerful kingdoms remained. To the south lay Upper Egypt, a narrow ribbon of fertile land enclosed by towering limestone cliffs. To the north spread Lower Egypt, where the Nile divided into countless branches before flowing into the Mediterranean Sea, creating one of the richest river deltas in the ancient world. Although modern maps place north at the top, the Egyptians named their kingdoms according to the river's flow. The Nile traveled from the southern highlands toward the northern sea. That is why Upper Egypt was located in the south, while Lower Egypt occupied the north. For generations, these two kingdoms developed independently. Each had its own royal court, its own sacred traditions, its own armies, and its own crown. The rulers of Upper Egypt wore the tall white crown, known as the Hejjet. Kings of Lower Egypt ruled beneath the red crown, called the Deshret. Both kingdoms believed the gods had chosen them to rule the entire Nile Valley. Only one could be right. Long before written history, the struggle for supremacy had already begun. Archaeologists have uncovered ceremonial weapons, fortress walls, and mass graves suggesting that warfare was becoming increasingly organized. These were no longer small tribal disputes. Entire regions now fought over trade routes, fertile land, and political influence. One remarkable artifact, known today as the battlefield palette, depicts defeated enemies lying beneath victorious rulers. Another famous discovery, the scorpion macehead, portrays a mysterious king wearing the white crown while performing a ceremonial irrigation ritual. Whether this ruler was a historical monarch or a legendary ancestor remains uncertain. His name survives only through the image of a scorpion carved beside his figure. Yet many historians believe the so-called Scorpion King represented one of the final rulers. Before Egypt became a single nation, religion was becoming just as important as military power. Every settlement honored its own divine protector. Falcons symbolized the sky. Jackals guarded cemeteries. Cobras represented royal authority. Crocodiles ruled dangerous waters. Cats protected homes from snakes and vermin. Rather than replacing older beliefs, new gods joined an ever-expanding spiritual world. The Egyptians rarely abandoned traditions. Instead, they combined them. This willingness to merge beliefs would later allow hundreds of local gods to exist peacefully within a single civilization. As kingdoms expanded, priests gained enormous influence. Temples became more than sacred spaces. They stored grain, recorded harvests, organized labor, managed trade, and advised rulers before military campaigns. To govern successfully, a king needed not only soldiers, he also needed divine approval. Religion and politics became inseparable. The pharaoh would eventually be viewed not simply as a ruler chosen by the gods, but as a living god himself. Trade connected Egypt with civilizations far beyond the Nile. Copper arrived from the Sinai Peninsula. Gold flowed north from Nubia. Rare cedar wood crossed the Mediterranean from the forests of Lebanon. Lapis lazuli traveled thousands of miles from the mountains of Afghanistan. These precious materials transformed Egyptian craftsmanship. Royal workshops produced elegant jewelry, ceremonial daggers, stone vessels, and decorative palettes unlike anything seen before. Luxury became another symbol of political authority. Around this time, one of humanity's greatest inventions quietly emerged: writing. At first, simple symbols marked ownership of grain, livestock, and trade goods. Small labels attached to jars recorded taxes. Clay ceilings identified officials. Gradually, these symbols became more detailed. Animals represented sounds. Objects expressed ideas. Eventually, they evolved into one of history's most recognizable writing systems, hieroglyphs. Unlike modern alphabets, hieroglyphic writing combined pictures, sounds, and symbolic meanings into an extraordinarily sophisticated language. Writing changed everything. Kings could record victories. Priests preserved religious ceremonies. Officials tracked taxes. Architects planned monumental projects. History itself could finally be remembered. But Egypt's earliest writing served another purpose few people expected. It was believed that writing possessed magical power. To carve a person's name into stone meant preserving part of their soul forever. Destroying that name threatened eternal existence. Centuries later, victorious pharaohs would erase the names of defeated rivals from monuments in an attempt to remove them from history itself. Memory became immortality. Stone became eternity. Then, sometime around 3100 BC, history changed forever. A powerful ruler from Upper Egypt launched a campaign unlike anything the Nile had witnessed before. Whether through diplomacy, marriage, military conquest, or a combination of all three. He succeeded where generations of rulers had failed. Upper and Lower Egypt became one kingdom. Modern historians generally identify this ruler as Narmer. Some ancient traditions later called him Menes. Whether these names belong to one man or to different rulers remains one of archaeology's oldest debates. But his achievement is undeniable. Egypt had become united. The greatest evidence of this extraordinary event survives on a ceremonial object, discovered over a century ago. Today it is known as the Narmer palette. Carved from green siltstone, it stands just over 60 centimeters tall. Yet its importance cannot be measured by size. On one side, Narmer wears the white crown of Upper Egypt while raising a ceremonial mace over a defeated enemy. Behind him stands a sandal bearer. Above them flies the falcon god Horus, symbolically controlling the conquered lands. On the opposite side, Narmer appears wearing the red crown of Lower Egypt. For the first time in history, one king wears both crowns. The message is unmistakable. Two kingdoms, one ruler, one Egypt. The union transformed the ancient world. Trade expanded dramatically. Internal warfare declined. Large-scale construction became possible. Taxes could be collected across hundreds of miles. Food reserves stabilized. Specialized professions multiplied. Scribes, engineers, stone masons, metal workers, shipbuilders, artists, priests. A centralized government allowed civilization to grow at an unprecedented pace. To symbolize this new nation, the king adopted a remarkable title. He became the Lord of the Two Lands. The white crown and red crown were combined into a single royal headdress known as the pshen. Every future pharaoh would inherit this symbol. Whenever Egyptians looked upon their ruler, they saw not one kingdom, but two forever united. With political unity came new religious ideas. The king was no ordinary human. He represented Horus, the falcon god, upon earth. His authority flowed directly from the divine realm. Maintaining order became his sacred responsibility. The Egyptians called this universal balance Mat. Mat represented truth, justice, harmony, balance. Without Mat, the universe would descend into chaos. Every successful harvest, every peaceful year, every military victory confirmed that the pharaoh still possessed the favor of the gods. Legends soon surrounded Egypt's first rulers. Some stories claimed divine beings themselves had once ruled before humans inherited the throne. Others spoke of hidden scrolls recording the names of kings who governed for thousands of years before recorded history began. One mysterious tradition described the followers of Horus semi-divine rulers, said to have governed Egypt before Narmer united the land. No archaeological evidence has confirmed these legends, yet they reveal how deeply later Egyptians believed their civilization stretched back into an age beyond memory. For them, history began with the gods. Humans merely continued their work. The first royal capital likely emerged near Memphis, strategically positioned between Upper and Lower Egypt. From there, the king could oversee both regions while controlling trade along the Nile. Memphis soon became one of the richest cities on earth. Its workshops produced luxury goods. Its temples attracted pilgrims. Its officials administered a kingdom stretching hundreds of miles. This city would remain a center of Egyptian power for more than 2,000 years. The earliest royal tombs also reflected growing ambition. Instead of simple graves, kings were buried within enormous rectangular structures called mastabas. Built from mud brick, these monumental tombs contained multiple chambers filled with food, furniture, jewelry, tools, ceremonial weapons, and offerings intended for eternal life. Some early rulers were even buried alongside servants and retainers, who would continue serving them in the afterlife. This controversial practice eventually disappeared, replaced by symbolic servant statues known as ashabti. But it reveals how absolute royal authority had already become. Egypt had entered a new age. The kingdoms were united. Writing had been born. Government had taken shape. Religion now supported political power. Yet the greatest achievements still lay ahead. Within only a few centuries, engineers would attempt something no civilization had ever accomplished. They would build monuments so enormous that thousands of years later, they would still dominate the horizon. The age of the pyramids was about to begin. The age of the pyramid builders. Egypt reaches the sky by the beginning of the Third Dynasty. Egypt had become one of the most organized kingdoms on earth. Its borders were secure. Its harvests were plentiful. Trade caravans crossed deserts carrying gold, incense, ivory, copper, and precious stones from distant lands. The authority of the pharaoh reached every village along the Nile. But one question now occupied the minds of Egypt's rulers more than any other. How could a king achieve eternal life? To modern eyes, pyramids appear to be symbols of royal power. To the Egyptians, they were something far greater. They were machines of eternity. Every block of stone, every chamber, every inscription was designed to ensure that the king would continue ruling forever, not on earth, but among the gods. For Egyptians, death was never the end. It was only another beginning. Long before the first pyramid appeared, kings were buried beneath large rectangular tombs called mastabas, built from mud brick. These impressive structures protected underground burial chambers filled with food, furniture, jewelry, ceremonial weapons, and everything a ruler might need in the next world. Each generation made these tombs larger than the last. Soon the question became inevitable. Could something even greater be built? The answer came from one extraordinary man. His name was Imhotep. Unlike most people who lived nearly 5,000 years ago, Imhotep's name was never forgotten. He served as the chief architect, royal advisor, high priest, physician, astronomer, and vizier to Pharaoh Djoser. Few individuals in history have mastered so many fields. Centuries after his death, Egyptians worshipped him as a god of wisdom and medicine. The Greeks later associated him with Asclepius, their own god of healing. Yet Imhotep's greatest achievement was neither medicine nor philosophy. It was architecture. He imagined something no one had attempted before. Instead of constructing one massive mastaba, he stacked several on top of one another. Each layer became smaller than the one beneath. The result changed architecture forever. Around 2670 BC, workers began building what is now known as the Step Pyramid of Saqqara. At more than 60 meters tall, it became the tallest structure ever created by human hands. Unlike earlier tombs built from mud brick, Imhotep used carefully cut limestone blocks. Stone replaced clay. Temporary became permanent. The monument was designed to survive eternity. The Step Pyramid was not simply a tomb. It stood at the center of an enormous ceremonial complex covering nearly 15 hectares. High walls surrounded courtyards, shrines, temples, storage buildings, and ceremonial gateways. Much of it was never intended for ordinary people. This was a sacred city built exclusively for a king's eternal life. Beneath the pyramid stretched another hidden world. More than 5 kilometers of tunnels wound through solid rock. Burial chambers disappeared into darkness. Secret passages confused potential robbers. Granite blocks weighing several tons sealed important entrances. The deeper archaeologists explored, the more complex the underground maze became. Even today, many sections remain inaccessible. Some chambers were decorated with brilliant blue faience tiles, designed to imitate royal palace walls. Others stored thousands of stone vessels inherited from earlier kings. The Egyptians believed that the king's spirit would continue living beneath the pyramid, before ascending into the heavens. But the Step Pyramid was only the beginning. Future rulers wanted something even more magnificent. One king would dedicate much of his reign to solving the greatest architectural challenge in history. His name was Snefru. Snefru, founder of Egypt's 4th dynasty, is often overshadowed by the rulers who followed him. Yet many historians consider him the true father of the pyramids. Unlike earlier kings, Snefru treated architecture as a process of experimentation. He was willing to fail. His first attempt was the Medum Pyramid, originally constructed as another step pyramid. Engineers later modified it into a smooth-sided structure. By filling the steps with additional stone, the idea was revolutionary. Unfortunately, part of the outer casing eventually collapsed. Whether this happened during construction or centuries later remains debated. Even today, the pyramid appears strangely incomplete, as if frozen halfway between two different ideas. Rather than abandoning his dream, Snefru tried again. This second project became one of Egypt's strangest monuments, known today as the Bennu Pyramid. Its lower section rises at a steep angle before suddenly changing direction halfway toward the summit. From a distance, the monument appears almost folded. Why? Modern engineers believe builders realized the original angle, placed enormous pressure on the structure. Instead of risking total collapse, they reduced the incline during construction. The Bennu Pyramid became a priceless lesson in ancient engineering. Failure was not hidden. It became part of the monument itself. Most kings would have stopped there. Snefru did not. He ordered yet another pyramid. This time, every mistake was corrected. The foundation rested upon solid bedrock. The angle was carefully calculated. Internal chambers distributed weight more efficiently. When completed, the Red Pyramid became Egypt's first true smooth-sided pyramid. It still stands today after more than 4,500 years. Its success paved the way for the greatest pyramid ever built. Sneferu's reign transformed Egypt. Massive expeditions traveled deep into Nubia searching for gold. Ships crossed the Mediterranean in search of cedar wood from Lebanon. Copper mines expanded across the Sinai Peninsula. Thousands of skilled craftsmen, quarry workers, surveyors, and engineers developed techniques that would soon make the impossible seem ordinary. Egypt was preparing for its greatest construction project. When Sneferu died, the throne passed to his son. History remembers him by the Greek name Khufu. The Egyptians knew him as Khufu. Two later generations, he became both admired and feared. Greek writers portrayed him as a cruel tyrant who exhausted his people building an impossible tomb. Modern archaeology paints a far more complicated picture. Evidence suggests Khufu inherited an extraordinarily wealthy and highly organized kingdom. Instead of enslaved laborers, skilled workers lived in carefully planned communities near the construction site. They received bread, beer, meat, medical treatment, even proper burials. Excavations have uncovered bakeries, breweries, workshops, and hospitals serving the pyramid builders. The Great Pyramid was not built by slaves. It was built by Egypt itself. Construction began on the Giza Plateau around 2580 BC. The location had been carefully selected. Solid limestone bedrock provided a stable foundation. The surrounding desert protected the monument from annual flooding. Nearby quarries supplied much of the building stone. More than 2 million limestone blocks would eventually be assembled. Some weighed over 15 tons. The granite used inside the king's chamber traveled hundreds of kilometers from Aswan. Even today, transporting such material would require extraordinary planning. How ancient engineers achieved this remains one of history's greatest engineering triumphs. Many theories have attempted to explain the construction process. Straight ramps, spiral ramps, internal ramps hidden within the pyramid itself, wooden sledges sliding across wet sand, copper tools working together with stone hammers. Although archaeologists continue debating the precise methods, discoveries over the past decades have revealed remarkable evidence of Egyptian ingenuity. Ancient workers left behind tool marks, quarry roads, construction camps, even papyrus journals describing the transportation of limestone by boat. The mystery no longer lies in who built the pyramids. The mystery lies in how they coordinated one of the largest construction projects ever attempted. Before the Industrial Revolution, the Great Pyramid originally stood nearly 147 meters high. Its polished white limestone casing reflected sunlight so brilliantly that travelers may have seen it from dozens of kilometers away. At sunrise, it must have appeared almost luminous. Some ancient visitors described it as resembling a giant staircase leading directly into heaven. For the Egyptians, this image was no coincidence. The pyramid represented the rays of the sun. Its sloping sides symbolized the path the king would climb to join Ra among the stars. Yet the greatest mysteries remained hidden inside. Narrow ascending passages, massive granite portcullis blocks, the king's chamber, the queen's chamber, the mysterious grand gallery rising more than 8 meters high. Tiny shafts pointing towards specific stars. No decoration covers the walls. No grand inscriptions celebrate Khufu's achievements. Instead, the monument speaks through mathematics, precision, and scale. Some joints between limestone blocks are so exact that even modern blades struggle to fit between them. After 45 centuries, the structure remains astonishingly accurate. Ancient Egyptian priests believed the king's soul consisted of multiple spiritual elements. The Ka represented life force. The Ba could travel between worlds. The Ak became the perfected spirit after successful judgment in the afterlife. Protecting the king's body ensured these spiritual parts could reunite forever. The pyramid was therefore not simply a tomb. It was a gateway, a carefully engineered bridge between earth and eternity. But even as Khufu's pyramid reached the heavens, another monument quietly began taking shape nearby. A monument that would become one of history's greatest enigmas. A creature with the body of a lion, the face of a king, and eyes fixed forever toward the rising sun. The Great Sphinx awaited its turn to enter history.